Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Royal We Fellowship. It is good to be here with you on this beautiful morning. I'm going to go ahead and move this up a little bit closer so that people can hear me. Sometimes people indicate that they have a difficult time with the volume. So I'm going to be fixing that. Good morning, Royal We Fellowship. It's so good to be here with you. Hopefully everything is good. All right. Here we go. Let's go ahead and open up in prayer, and then we'll go ahead and get started. And I want to just bless you right off the bat. Thank you so much for being here. Sorry for the little flickering there as I moved my computer, but we are ready to go ahead and get going. So let's go ahead and open up in prayer. And I don't see anybody commenting or showing up yet. Hopefully everybody is okay. We'll go ahead and get started here. Our Father, who art in heaven, how holy is your name? And your kingdom will come, and your will shall be done here on this earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day, and each and every day, our daily bread. And forgive us of our sins as we forgive those who have sinned against us. Lead us not into temptation, and deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. And everybody says, Amen. Now, I'm not exactly sure why I'm not able to see the live chat. Let me see if I can open it up here. Typically, there's people commenting on the live chat, but not today. Perhaps there's some kind of perhaps there's something wrong with the chat box. I see that there are thumbs up, but I just don't see the live chat. So, but that's okay. That's all right. I trust that you all are here. You're all having a good and blessed morning. And either way, we are going to have a great message. We are in the story of Joseph. And as we have continued on in the story of Joseph, there's a lot that we can learn about healing from narcissistic abuse, about moving on, about finding out our purpose, about being able to receive everything that God has in life for us. And unfortunately, for many of us, as we see in Joseph's case, it comes at a great cost. It comes at a great pain. Joseph experienced the ultimate in betrayal, as many of you and myself have in fact, and that is the betrayal and the rejection of your own siblings, of your own family. This is the real pain of narcissistic abuse, is when it comes from your family dynamic, when it comes from the siblings, when you're rejected from that place. And so we see that this is where Joseph was. He was sold into slavery by his brothers. He was taken to Egypt. And now it's important to understand the age at which all of this took place. So it's said that Joseph was actually thrown in the pit by his brothers at a young age of 17, no older than 17. And now there's reasons as to why they believe he was this young, okay? First of all, he was helpless with his older brothers. In other words, he wasn't able or strong enough to defend himself, to run fast enough to get away, he just wasn't able to get out of the situation. So it's not likely that he was over the age of 20. He was probably within his teens, where his brothers could have easily have gotten him and thrown him into that pit. So they placed Joseph in his teens when he was actually sold into Egypt by his brothers. Now, it's interesting to note that, because we're going to find out how old Joseph is before he gets into his rightful position and the blessings that God has for him after experiencing the narcissistic abuse of his brothers. So last week we were talking about all the different issues that Joseph ran into. So he was sold into slavery. He worked for Potiphar. Potiphar's wife had thought that Joseph was hot, set Joseph up, accused him of becoming sexual, which he didn't. It was his wife that wanted that. had him thrown back in jail. So Joseph was back in jail again. And then we come to this place where he started to interpret dreams. And now last week we were talking about how Pharaoh, the Pharaoh of Egypt, which that's a pretty big deal. Again, at the time, Egypt was the Mecca of the world. Pharaoh was in charge of everything. Pharaoh was it, right? Pharaoh was beyond president status. Pharaoh was beyond king status. In the ancient Egyptian days, they looked at Pharaoh as a combination of what we would call king, president, and pope all rolled into one. Pharaoh was it, the spiritual head, the leader, the whatever you want to call it. That was Pharaoh. He was everything. And so Pharaoh was troubled by these dreams that we saw this, and we were in Genesis chapter 41. Genesis chapter 41. So if you have your Bibles, open up to that. Pharaoh was troubled by these dreams that he had of healthy cows grazing and then ugly, rotting cows coming up behind those healthy cows and eating them. Kind of scary, nightmarish type stuff, right? And then likewise, he had another dream of grain growing, good, healthy grain that you would like to eat. And then behind that grain was rotten weeds and growing that would come up and ate the good grain. Nightmarish stuff for Pharaoh. So Pharaoh didn't understand the dreams. And the fact that they were consecutive for him was troubling to him. He realized that something was speaking to him. Something was trying to give him information. This is something we also hit on last week, is that oftentimes our dreams are trying to give us information. We cannot discredit dreams. One of the things that I understand about dreams is that they are very informative in our lives. You can call it a phenomenon. Some people will say that dreams are just a result of what we see or what we eat. I don't believe that. I have had many dreams that have shaken me to my core, that have given me certain types of insights, and I'm sure you have too. When we are asleep and when we are in our subconscious, we are able to be in places and receive things that we're not when we're busy and preoccupied, almost as if you are in a state of meditation, if you will. Now, how many of you know the power of meditation? When you meditate, you can receive peace, you can receive insight. Where does it come from? What happens? What space is opened up inside of you when you just let things go, when you stop wrestling within your mind? This is where we are when we're sleeping as well. When we're asleep, our mind is not wrestling. We're not consciously going through our memory banks. We're not consciously keeping ourselves busy and occupied. So we're open to what messages are trying to be said to us. This is important to understand. All right. Man, I'm bummed that I'm not able to see the chats. That is a real bummer. But I'm going to continue on nonetheless. Sorry for breaking my stride there. I just don't understand YouTube sometimes. All right, but moving on. So Pharaoh had these dreams. Joseph comes along, and he was able to interpret them because he helped some other people out by interpreting their dreams while he was in prison. All right. And so when the Pharaoh was looking for someone to interpret the dreams, and by the way, nobody could do it. His wizards, his magicians, nobody could tell him what the dreams meant. The cupbearer said, I know a guy, I met him in the jail, and he can do it for you. So Pharaoh sent for him. He came, he interpreted the dreams. Now, watch this. This is an important aspect that Joseph teaches us and shows us about growing up out of narcissistic abuse. Our tendency when we are abused by narcissistic people, and Joseph has been hit by narcissists, not only with his siblings, but then with Potiphar's wife, and not only Potiphar's wife, but, being thrown back in jail. And so he had a really rough time. Our tendency when we experience narcissistic abuse is to want to prove ourselves. Our tendency is to want to say, I am better. I'm going to prove it. I am good. I can do this. I can do that. Right? That's our tendency. Because we're so damaged and demolished and broken down by what the narcissists have lied about us and said about us, that we feel we have to make up our character ourselves. What Joseph is teaching us and what the ancient authors of the Bible are trying to show us here is that you don't have to do that. You don't have to prove yourself. It's actually better, as it is in Joseph's case, to humble yourself, get the attention off of yourself, and point to God. Point to something greater than you. And this is what Joseph did when Pharaoh went to Joseph and said, "Hey, Joseph, I heard that you can interpret my dreams. I've been having some nightmares lately. I don't know what they mean, and it's been said that you can do it." And in chapter 41, verse 15, chapter 41, verse 15 of Genesis, this is what we see. Pharaoh sent for Joseph, quickly brought him out of the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream. No one can interpret it, but I have heard it said that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." So Pharaoh is actually giving Joseph this praise. Pharaoh is giving Joseph every reason for Joseph to say, "That's right. As a matter of fact, I can do that. I'm the man. Rumors of me have traveled. Finally, I am getting the notoriety that I deserved. My brothers, they didn't know me. They threw me in a pit. Potiphar's wife, she didn't know me. She tried to throw me back in jail. But Pharaoh, you know me because I'm awesome." That wasn't his response. What did Joseph say here? Joseph in verse 16 said this, "I cannot do it. I cannot do it." It's right there. Joseph replied to Pharaoh, "It's not me. I cannot interpret your dreams." Get this right. I'm a nobody. I cannot interpret your dreams, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. Now, we look at this as Joseph putting another person up above him. But what Joseph has figured out throughout all of his time in prison and throughout dealing with his brothers and this and that is that people in general, if you approach people with this "I can do this" attitude, people are automatically going to view you as a potential threat. Oh, so-and-so can do this. Well, I got to watch out because at some point he's going to think he's better than me. We talked a little bit about this last time. Joseph eliminates that right away with Pharaoh. Joseph in front of Pharaoh says, "Listen, you're the Pharaoh. God or whomever put you," and we say God or whomever because the Egyptians were not known because of their faith in the true God. They just weren't. They were into paganisms and mysticisms and witches and all kinds of weird, not witches, wizardry, whatever the case may be, right? They were into all this stuff, right? They were not godly people. But Joseph still acknowledged that he was there before them because of God, and so he would rather not challenge them. He would rather not say, "Yeah, I'm the man," which could potentially say, "Is this guy a threat to us? Does he think he's better?" And so instead he says, "No, I can't interpret any dreams, but God will give you the answer, and I serve God." That's basically what he's saying. He's taking himself out of the equation. He's making himself not a threat to Pharaoh. He is humbling down. And this is what you and I need to pay attention to because this is an important aspect of what it is to be humble. Oftentimes, humbleness is just getting the attention off of ourselves. It's not giving in to people's abuse. It's not, it's just getting the attention off of ourselves so that we don't get wrapped up in weird situations. Joseph did that. Verse 16, "I cannot do it," Joseph replied to Pharaoh, "but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." So Joseph then interprets the dreams. We talked about that last week. Then Joseph says to Pharaoh, in verse 28, it says God has shown Pharaoh what he's about to do, the 7 years of abundance plus the 7 years of famine. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh, verse 32, in two forms, is that the matter has been firmly decided by God. God will do it soon. The interpretation of the dreams was this, that there's going to be 7 years of abundance of food and all this great stuff, 7 years where they're just going to be experiencing wealth. And then immediately after that, 7 years of famine is going to hit them upside the head like like a truck. Boom, suddenly cut off. Nothing's going to grow. Everything's going to be dying in the land. And if it was not for God giving Pharaoh this interpretation of the dream through Joseph, all Egyptians would suffer and die. This was the dream. Verse 37, the plan seemed good. So Joseph tells Pharaoh, make sure you get people. You appoint people to store up food. Do whatever you can because this is real. Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has made all this known to you, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all the people should submit to your orders. With only respect to the throne will I be greater than you. Pharaoh, again, is now shining. Because Joseph says, I'm not trying to be anybody special. God is going to give you the answer you need, Pharaoh. Pharaoh says, Joseph, because of your connection with God, you're staying right here, man. You are my right-hand man. You're no threat to me. You're not here for your own glory. And so he says, you are in charge of everything. I give you, Pharaoh says, I give you everything. I entrust Egypt to you. All of it. Only with respect to the throne are you beneath that. So basically he's saying that I hereby put you in charge. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. Meaning Pharaoh says, the only thing, I'm just going to sit on the throne, but you do your thing. You take over. You take over, right? Pharaoh says, I put you in charge. Verse 41, I hereby put you in charge over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh also took one of his signet rings from his finger. This is a big deal. He put it on Joseph. Says, I'm not even going to wear this ring. You are. A signet ring. What's a signet ring? It's a signifier of royalty. He is the royal. He is the king. He is the Pharaoh. He's put that on Joseph's finger. All because Joseph tried to take himself out of the situation and say, God is going to tell you. We need to understand this. Now watch this. One of the most important things, and we're going to wrap this message up right here. This is one of the most important things that you and I can take away from this. Verse 46, chapter 41, verse 46 of Genesis tells us this. Well, before we get there, verse 44, the Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your word, no one will lift a hand or a foot in all of Egypt. So Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zaphenath-Paneah and gave him Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. So Pharaoh also gave Joseph a wife, and they had children. Joseph went through the land of Egypt. Joseph, this is an important part. It tells us how old Joseph was at this point. Verse 46 says, Joseph was 36 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. 30 years old. So if you remember back to the beginning of this message, when Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers, when he was thrown in a pit and left to die, he was young enough, he was old enough to have found his brothers, but too young to defend himself or run away. So we place him in his teens. Here he's 30. So more than a decade of trouble in Joseph's life. This is important. I want you all to understand something here, because many of us have gotten out of narcissistic abusive relationships 3 years ago, 2 years ago, last year, 5 years ago. And we're wondering, why are we still in pain? Why are we still suffering? Why are we still in anguish over this? Well, it's because of the time it takes for God to rebuild your view of the world in order to fulfill a purpose that you have. Joseph, from a teen to going to Egypt, to being thrown in jail again, to be falsely accused, to experience the horrors of humanity, then to finally, at 30 years old, be able to finally come out and say, Pharaoh, I can't do anything for you, but God is going to help you. And then for Pharaoh to put his ring on Joseph's finger at the age of 30, it took over 10 years, 17 years. Possibly. Well, 12, 14. I'm not sure. Nobody knows the exact amount of years. But we know that he was a teen. He was young when he went, and he was 30, based on Scripture, when he went into service. So there's more than a decade of processing the pain of the narcissism of this world. So the message here is to be patient. The message here is expect these things to be wrestled out of you. Expect to be in dark places like dungeons, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, as God is working things out of your life, views out of your life, to get you to a place where you are submissive to God and where God can elevate you. And this is where Joseph was. Now, this is important. Verse 50 says this: before the years of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph by Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, a priest of On. Verse 51 says this: Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh and said, it is because God has made me forget all my trouble in all of my father's household. You want to know how to forget the narcissistic abuse that you have endured? Experience this pain that you're in. Experience the dark place, the being in the dungeon, the being in the prison of your mind, of your hearts. Experience it until you're able to come out of it, as Joseph did. When people call on you, I can't help you, but God can. And show up and be present. Experience the pain of letting go of the I can do that attitude. Let me do it. Let me prove myself. Let me show I'm the best. When you're out of that, God will bring things into your life, and then God will also make you forget the trouble of your past. Joseph has stumbled upon something profound here. When we get ourselves out of the way, God will bring us into a new life. He will provide us with an overabundance of joy and with things. This is what Joseph is saying. And as a result, it says, it is because God has made me forget all my trouble in my father's household. Joseph is saying, I don't even think about them anymore. I don't think about the being ditched by my brothers. I don't think about the pain of my brothers rejecting and abandoning me. Wow. This is your answer. So 2 things. 1, it takes time. Joseph did not go from being thrown in a pit to all of a sudden being in this place where he says, I have forgotten all the pain. No, it took over a decade. It took time Joseph had to spend in jail, in prison, in the dungeon. It took being falsely accused. It took him being abandoned by his family, being rejected, experiencing narcissistic abuse. It took him all of this. And then 10 years after, this is when he's able to finally say, or a decade after, this is where he's finally able to say, I get it now. Everything I went through prepared me for this, and God has made me forget everything of my father's house. And then with that, exactly what was interpreted came to pass. A famine, the 7 years abundance came, and then the famine came, but they were prepared because Joseph was there. Verse 56, when the famine had spread all over the whole country, Joseph opened up all the storehouses, sold grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout Egypt, and all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, because the famine was severe everywhere. The earth was basically in a drought, not just Egypt, but the earth. And people were coming from all over the earth, all over the place, to Egypt. Now, next week, we're going to get into Joseph seeing his brothers again, the same brothers who were narcissistically abusive, who threw him in the pit. Now, I wasn't able to see your comments today, and I don't know why. I wish I could see your comments. I hope that everything is good. I hope you were able to hear everything. And with that, I just want to let you know I will be having videos posted all week. If you would like to support the Royal We, you can do so. There's a PayPal link down below. If you would like to support the fellowship, it's not required but inspired for you to do so. In addition to that, you can follow me on Instagram at Join the Royal We. You can send me emails, message me. I do take one-on-one appointments as well to help you understand a lot of these concepts and for us to grow together. And I look forward to being here next Saturday morning with you right here on Royal We Fellowship. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Have a great weekend and be blessed. Bye.